We're in the midst of a series of studies entitled Anchors in the Storm. For our devotion today, I want you to think of a very familiar story. It's a story that's told in 1 Samuel chapter 1. It's a story about a man called Elkanah who has two wives. One's name is Peninnah and the other is Hannah. And the Bible says that while Peninnah was blessed with children, Hannah was barren. And this led to great pain, great agony in the life of Hannah. She was reviled by Peninnah all of the time, and she faced great brokenness in her life. This was possibly the worst storm that Hannah faced in her entire life. In 1 Samuel chapter 1, the Bible says of a time when Hannah could take it no longer. She comes into the temple and she cries before God and she says, God, if you would listen to me and give me a son, I will give him back to you. And you know that God, in his own beautiful divine appointment, blessed Hannah with a son. And that son was none other than Samuel, the prophet, priest, and judge over the household of Israel. You're asking me what lessons one can learn from that story in terms of anchors in the storm. I'd like us to ask Hannah that question. I'd like us to ask Hannah, what did you learn through the storms of your life? And I suspect that Hannah would say two things. Number one, Hannah would tell us, I learned through the storms of my life that God has a divine purpose for every storm. You know, when I went through that storm, I would get depressed. When I went through that storm, I would get angry. When I went through that storm, I thought nobody cared for me. When I went through that storm, I thought God was far away from me. But when I held Samuel in my hand, I recognized that God had done something beautiful. He had kept me barren for his perfect time. It was in his perfect time that Samuel would come into this world, and God had chosen me to be the instrument through whom he would bring this great prophet, priest, and judge over the household of Israel. My storm had a purpose. God allowed me to go through that time of uncertainty because the all-knowing God, the God of perfect timing, the God who is in control of everything, was going to give me the joy of being the mother of Samuel. God has a purpose in our storms. And if Hannah could speak to you today, she would say, as you face that storm right now, I want to tell you, God has a purpose for your storm. The second lesson that Hannah teaches us is that the storms of life prepared Hannah to become the person she was. Hannah would say to us, on that day when I came before God and said to him, God, give me a son, I will give him back to you. It had taken years for God to prepare me to come to that place. My pains, my storms, my agonies had prepared me. They had purified me. They had broken me, melted me, molded me. I was now at that place where I was able to say, God, give me a son, and I will give him back to you. God put me through the storms so that his divine purposes in my life could be fulfilled. God put me through the storm because he was preparing me for the most beautiful plan that he had for my life. I still remember the day when I brought Samuel to the temple and left him at the temple. My heart was broken. I had taken care of this apple of my eye for the last 3 years. Now the time of weaning was over. I had to keep my covenant to God. I gave my son away. And every year as I went to visit him, the priest Eli would bless me. And he would say, may God give you children in the place of the one you gave away. When I gave him away, I didn't have any children. But every year as I came back, God was merciful to me. I finally had 5 children. I want to tell you, God prepared me through the storms for his beautiful plans. So I want to suggest today that as we hit those storms, maybe somebody is going through a storm, I want you to think about these 2 lessons. Number 1, God has a purpose for every storm in the life of a child of God. There is no accident. God is in control. Number 2, God is preparing me through these storms to become the man, to become the woman he wants me to be. I pray that as you go through the trials of life, you would be encouraged by the story of Hannah, that you would hang in there, that you would anchor in Jesus, and may your life bring Him honor, praise, and glory. Amen.